The crystal towers of Valdris Prime stretched into the pale sky like frozen lightning. Each tower held representatives from different worlds, different species, all gathered for one purpose. Today they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the floating corridors, her footsteps echoing against the smooth walls. She had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Council for 10 years. She knew every delegate by name, understood their customs, spoke their languages. But today she felt like a stranger among them. The main chamber was massive. 47 different species sat in their designated areas, each group designed for their specific needs. The aquatic Narratins floated in water-filled spheres. The silicon-based crystallites hung from the ceiling in their mineral formations. The insect-like Zephyrians dominated the center platform, their ancient leaders whispering in their clicking language. Sarah took her place at the human podium. It was smaller than the others, placed near the back. A reminder that humans were still the newest members, still on probation after 30 years. Elder Zefthak raised one of his 4 arms. His translator device made his words sound cold and mechanical. The council will hear the charges against the human species. A holographic display appeared above the chamber. Images of Kepler 42b filled the air. The planet looked beautiful from space, with blue oceans and green continents. But the images changed, showing the damage. The humans were given permission to terraform 3 dead worlds, Zefthak continued. Instead, they destroyed a living ecosystem. Their machines awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. Sarah watched the images with a heavy heart. The terraforming project had been going perfectly. The atmosphere was becoming breathable. Oceans were forming. Plants were growing. Then the ground had started moving. Nobody knew about the sleeping ones. The survey teams had found no signs of life. The planet had been dead for millions of years, or so they thought. But human terraforming equipment had pumped water deep into the ground, reaching chambers that had been dry for ages, and something had woken up. The creatures were unlike anything anyone had seen. They moved like plants but thought like animals. They communicated through chemical signals carried by the wind. And they were angry about being disturbed. The human colonists fled, said Representative Qualthon from the Hegemony Worlds. His blue skin glowed brighter when he was upset, and today he was blazing like a star. They left behind their machines, their buildings, their waste. The entire planet is now hostile to any outside contact. Sarah stood up. We tried to communicate with them. We offered to leave, to restore the planet to its original state, but they wouldn't respond to any of our attempts. Because you hurt them, snapped Ambassador Kretal of the Void Swimmers. Her tentacles writhed with emotion. Your machines pumped poison into their homes for months before they could react. Would you forgive someone who did that to your children? The chamber filled with angry sounds. Clicking, whistling, growling. Sarah had heard these sounds before, but never all directed at her. Elder Zefthak's voice cut through the noise. This is not the first incident. Human expansion has been aggressive and careless. Your species spreads too fast, changes too much, takes too many risks. Sarah looked around the chamber. These beings came from civilizations that were thousands of years old. The Zephyrians had been spacefaring when humans were still living in caves. The crystallites had built their first starships before Earth's sun was fully formed. To them, humanity was barely out of childhood. We learn from our mistakes, Sarah said. Every species here has had accidents during their development. The Narratins accidentally flooded 3 star systems when they first learned to move water through space. The Hegemony created a plague that killed billions on their own homeworld. We all make errors when we're growing. But we learn to be careful, Qualthon replied. We follow the established protocols. We respect the ancient ways. Humans refuse to accept limits. Representative Morden of the Stonewalkers stood up slowly. His rocky body creaked as he moved. Humans have contributed much to the Council. Their medical knowledge has saved millions of lives. Their engineering has solved problems we struggled with for centuries. Their art and culture have enriched us all. Some delegates nodded agreement. Humans had brought new ideas to old problems. They approached challenges differently, found solutions that others missed, but Elder Zefthak was not impressed. Innovation without wisdom is dangerous. Humans change too much, too quickly. They do not respect tradition. They question everything, even when the answers have been known for millennia. Sarah felt a chill. This wasn't really about Kepler 442b, this was about fear. Fear of change, fear of new ideas, fear of a species that didn't follow the rules. The Council has made its decision, Zefthak announced. Humans are too dangerous to remain in civilized space. Your species is expelled from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted. Some delegates cheered. Others sat in shocked silence. A few tried to object, but Zefthak's voice overpowered them all. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 1 standard year. Trade agreements with human worlds are terminated. Human ships are banned from Council space. A quarantine zone will be established around your star system. Sarah stood frozen. This was worse than anything she had imagined. They weren't just being kicked out of the Council. They were being cut off from the galaxy entirely. You cannot do this, she said. We have citizens on those colonies. Families, children, elderly people who cannot travel. 3 million humans live beyond Earth's system. They chose to leave human space, Zefthak replied. They can choose to return or they can face the consequences. The vote was called. Sarah watched as species after species voted against humanity. Even some who had been friendly in the past turned away. Only 7 species voted to keep humans in the Council. 40 voted for exile. As the session ended, Sarah walked back through the crystal corridors. A few delegates tried to approach her to offer quiet apologies or explanations. She ignored them all. Words wouldn't help now. Her ship waited at the orbital dock. The crew was already preparing for departure. They had heard the news through their communication links. Captain Martinez looked grim as Sarah boarded. "Orders, Ambassador?" he asked. Sarah looked back at Valdris Prime through the viewport. The beautiful crystal towers caught the light of the system's twin suns. For 30 years, she had thought of this place as a symbol of cooperation and peace. Now she saw it differently. "Set course for Earth," she said. "Maximum speed." As the ship turned away from the Council world, Sarah activated her personal communicator. The message would take hours to reach Earth, but she needed to send it now. "This is Ambassador Chen reporting from Valdris Prime. The Council has voted. We are expelled from galactic civilization. All human colonies beyond Sol system are to be abandoned. A quarantine zone will be established around our space." She paused, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 million humans were about to become refugees in their own galaxy. Somewhere else, Earth was about to find itself completely alone. "They have made their choice," she said into the communicator. "Now we make ours." The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Council worlds behind. Sarah Chen, the last human ambassador to the Galactic Council, was going home to deliver the worst news in human history. But she was also carrying something else, a determination that had been growing during the entire session. If the galaxy didn't want humans as partners, perhaps it was time to show them what humans could accomplish on their own. The exile was beginning, but so was something new. Something the Council would learn to regret. The emergency meeting had been going for 6 hours. President Maria Santos rubbed her tired eyes and looked around the table at Earth's top leaders. Military commanders, scientists, economists, diplomats, all of them trying to figure out how to save their species from complete isolation. "The numbers are clear," said Economic Advisor Chen Wei, no relation to the ambassador. "Without Council trade, our economy will collapse within 2 years. We import 70% of our rare metals from Zephyrian mining worlds. Our medical supplies come from Narration biofarms. Our energy crystals from crystallite foundries." Admiral Elizabeth Torres slammed her hand on the table. "We survived for thousands of years before we met these aliens. We can do it again." "Not with 3 million colonists trapped outside our system," replied Director James Wright from the Xenotechnology Department. "The Council fleet is already moving to enforce the quarantine. Any human ship trying to reach our colonies will be destroyed." Santos looked at the holographic star map floating above the table. Red zones marked areas now forbidden to human ships. Blue dots showed Earth's colonies. Most of the blue dots were now inside red zones. "What about the colonists themselves?" Santos asked. "Have we heard from them?" Communication Director Lisa Park activated her tablet. "Messages are still getting through, though the Council is jamming most channels. The colonists are scared but angry. Most are refusing to evacuate." "Refusing?" Santos raised an eyebrow. "They're calling the Council order illegal. They say they were born on those worlds and nobody has the right to exile them from their own homes." Admiral Torres smiled grimly. "Sounds like our people." Santos understood the sentiment, but the reality was harsh. The colonies were defenseless. Earth's fleet was outdated compared to Council ships. Humanity had always relied more on diplomacy than military force. "Dr. Wright," Santos said, "what are our options?" Wright activated his own display. I've been working on something. We call it Project Prometheus. During our conflicts with pirates and raiders over the years, we've captured several alien ships. Most are damaged, but we've been studying their technology. The hologram showed a sleek alien vessel, its hull cut open to reveal the interior systems. Their faster-than-light drives work completely differently from ours. Their weapons are more efficient. Their shields are stronger. But here's the interesting part. Wright highlighted several sections of the ship. Their designs are thousands of years old. They never change them. What do you mean? Santos asked. Every Zephyrian ship we've captured has the same basic design as ships from their historical records. Same with Narration vessels, crystallite transports, all of them. They perfect a design once and then never improve it. Admiral Torres leaned forward. They're stagnant. Exactly. They're so focused on tradition and stability that they've stopped innovating. Meanwhile, humans have been improving our technology constantly. Our ships are crude compared to theirs, but they're also newer in design. Wright brought up another display. I believe we can combine their advanced materials and power sources with our more modern engineering approaches. Create something neither of us could build alone. Santos felt a spark of hope. How long would this take? With full industrial support? 2 years for prototypes, 5 years for a real fleet. We don't have 5 years, Torres said. The council deadline is 1 year. Wright nodded. That's why I'm recommending we don't try to evacuate the colonies. We arm them instead. The room fell silent. Arming civilian colonies was a huge step. It would make the council see humans as a military threat, rather than just troublemakers. The colonists want to stay and fight, Wright continued. They know their worlds better than any invader. Give them the tools they need and they can hold out until we develop a proper fleet. Santos looked at Admiral Torres. Can we do it? Supply and train 3 million colonists for war? Torres studied the star map. It won't be easy. We'd have to smuggle weapons and trainers through the quarantine zone. But our people are resourceful. The miners on Titan's Reach know how to make explosives. The farmers on New Geneva understand logistics. The researchers on Darwin's world can build almost anything. What about the moral question? Asked ethics advisor Dr. Patel. We're asking civilians to risk their lives fighting professional military forces. They're already risking their lives, Torres replied. The council won't just let them leave peacefully. They'll make examples of some colonies to scare the others. Better to fight on their own terms. Santos made her decision. Dr. Wright, you have full authorization for Project Prometheus. Every resource Earth can spare goes to reverse engineering alien technology. Admiral Torres, begin Operation Lifeline. Get weapons and trainers to our colonies, but do it quietly. Over the following months, Earth transformed. Factories that once made consumer goods started producing military equipment. Universities shifted from theoretical research to practical engineering. The entire planet became focused on one goal: breaking the galactic quarantine. The colonies responded with determination that surprised even Earth's leaders. Miners used their excavation equipment to build underground bunkers. Farmers turned their knowledge of genetics to creating new medicines and supplies. Scientists worked around the clock to improve the weapons smuggled to them. More importantly, they started innovating on their own. Cut off from Earth's traditional supply chains, the colonists had to solve problems in new ways. A mining colony figured out how to make spaceship armor from processed asteroid materials. A research station developed a new type of engine that was slower than alien drives, but much harder to detect. Dr. Wright's reverse engineering project made breakthrough after breakthrough. Alien power cores were impressive, but human engineers found ways to make them more efficient. Alien shields were strong, but humans developed systems that could adapt and learn from incoming attacks. The first prototype warship rolled out of Earth's shipyards 18 months after the exile. It looked nothing like traditional human ships or alien vessels. It was angular where alien ships were curved, practical where they were elegant. The test pilots called it ugly, but they also said it handled like a dream. Admiral Torres stood in the shipyard looking at humanity's first post-exile warship. President Santos joined her on the observation deck. Think it will work? Santos asked. It's faster than our old ships, tougher than anything we've built before, and carries weapons that can punch through alien shields, Torres replied. But we won't know for sure until we use it in battle. Santos nodded. The Council patrol ships have been getting more aggressive. They destroyed a supply convoy last week, claiming it was carrying weapons. It was carrying weapons, Torres said with a slight smile. just not the kind they expected. The supply convoy had been carrying new communication equipment, allowing the colonies to coordinate with each other for the first time since the quarantine began. The colonies were no longer isolated communities waiting for rescue. They were becoming a network, sharing resources and information across dozens of star systems. Dr. Wright joined them at the window. "I have news from the outer colonies. The Vakari have made contact," Santos turned sharply. The Vakari were a reptilian species that had always been quiet in council meetings. They were known for their stealth technology and their dislike of the dominant Zephyrian culture. "What kind of contact?" "Unofficial. They're offering to trade advanced stealth systems for human medical technology. Apparently, they've been impressed by our adaptability." This was unexpected. If other species were willing to work with humans despite the council ban, it changed everything. "Are there others?" Santos asked. Wright nodded. "The Nexus Corps sent a data packet through one of our research stations. They want to examine our adaptive technologies. And we've detected lithium signals near the Darwin's World colony." Admiral Torres felt a cold satisfaction. The council thought they were punishing us by cutting us off from galactic civilization. Instead, they're forcing us to become something new. Santos looked out at the stars. Something stronger. The exile had been meant to weaken humanity, to force them back into their home system where they would slowly decline into irrelevance. Instead, it had freed them from the limitations of council oversight and traditional thinking. Human colonies were becoming fortresses. Earth was becoming an industrial powerhouse, and other species were beginning to wonder if the council had made a terrible mistake. The gathering storm was about to break, and the galaxy was not prepared for what humanity had become in its isolation. The Centauri Gate had been humanity's most important trade route before the exile. Now it was the site of the first real test of human resolve. Admiral Torres watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as her small fleet approached the heavily defended checkpoint. 3 council patrol ships waited at the gate. They were sleek vessels from the hegemony, their blue hulls gleaming in the light of Proxima Centauri. Beautiful ships built more for showing power than using it. The aliens had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. "Long-range sensors show the supply convoy is 2 hours behind us," reported Commander Sarah Kim from the navigation station. "If we can't clear the gate, those colonists on Kepler Station will starve." Torres nodded. The convoy carried food, medical supplies, and most importantly, the new adaptive defense systems Dr. Wright's team had developed. But getting past the council blockade would require fighting, and fighting meant revealing what humanity had become during 5 years of exile. "Send the standard message," Torres ordered. The communication officer transmitted the prepared statement. "Council vessels, this is Admiral Torres of Earth Fleet. We are escorting humanitarian supplies to human colonists. We request safe passage," the reply came quickly. The voice was mechanical, filtered through a translation system, but the arrogance came through clearly. "Human vessels, you are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 2847. Turn back immediately or face destruction." Torres had expected this response. The Council couldn't allow any human ships to break the quarantine. It would show weakness, encourage other species to question Council authority. "This is your final warning," the alien commander continued. "Withdraw or be destroyed." Torres looked around her bridge. The crew was young, most of them trained during the exile years. They had never known the old days when humanity begged for acceptance from alien civilizations. To them, humans were equals to any species in the galaxy. "All ships assume attack formation Delta," Torres commanded. "Remember, we're not here to start a war. We're here to finish one that started the day they exiled us." The 3 human vessels moved into position. They were smaller than the Council ships, but more maneuverable. Their hulls were covered in adaptive armor that could shift its properties based on incoming attacks. Their weapons were hybrids of human engineering and alien technology, designed to punch through shields that had never been tested against innovative designs. The alien commander must have realized the humans weren't backing down. His ships powered up their weapons and shields, moving to intercept the human fleet. "Multiple energy signatures detected," reported the tactical officer. "They're charging plasma cannons." Torres felt calm settle over her. This moment had been inevitable since the day of exile. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humans learned while they were keeping us locked away." The battle lasted exactly 14 minutes and 27 seconds. The Council ships opened fire first, their plasma cannons sending brilliant blue streams of energy toward the human vessels. It should have been the end of the fight. Hegemony plasma weapons were among the most powerful in the galaxy, but the adaptive armor did its job. The first shots hit the Defiance's hull and were absorbed, the armor shifting its molecular structure to dissipate the energy. By the time the second volley arrived, the armor had learned. The plasma beams bounced off harmlessly. The alien commander must have been shocked. His weapons were supposed to be unstoppable. Instead, the human ships kept coming, accelerating toward his position with reckless courage. Torres waited until they were in close range before giving the order to fire. The human weapons were different from anything in Council databases. Instead of single powerful beams, they fired streams of adaptive projectiles that changed their properties during flight. The Council ship's shields were designed to stop plasma and particle beams. They were not prepared for projectiles that turned into electromagnetic pulses just before impact, shorting out shield generators before exploding against unprotected hulls. The first Hegemony vessel lost its shields within 30 seconds. The second tried to retreat but ran into the crossfire from two human ships. The third attempted to ram the Defiance, a traditional honor tactic that should have resulted in mutual destruction. Instead, Admiral Torres did something no Council commander would expect. She rammed back. The human ship was designed for this kind of impact. Its hull was segmented, able to absorb damage while keeping vital systems protected. When the two vessels collided, the alien ship cracked like an egg while the Defiance kept fighting. The surviving alien crew surrendered rather than face destruction. Torres accepted their surrender, but confiscated their ship's computer cores. Human technicians would learn everything the Council knew about their patrol patterns, communication codes, and fleet positions. Word of the victory spread through both human and alien space faster than anyone expected. The colonies celebrated, knowing that Earth had not abandoned them. Other species took notice too, especially those who had always resented Council dominance. The first to make contact were the Vakari. Their stealth ships appeared near human colonies within days of the battle, carrying proposals for technology trades and mutual defense agreements. They had been watching humanity's development with interest, and the victory at Centauri Gate convinced them that humans might be valuable allies. The Nexus Corps, a collective of artificial intelligences, sent data packets offering advanced computational systems in exchange for human innovation techniques. They were fascinated by humanity's ability to combine different technologies in ways their creators had never imagined. Most surprising were the Lithans, crystalline beings who had been enslaved by other Council species for centuries, forced to work in dangerous mines because their bodies could survive in environments that killed organic life. They offered their computational power and mineral processing knowledge to any species willing to treat them as equals, rather than tools. President Santos convened another emergency session, but this time the mood was different. Instead of desperation, there was determination. Instead of isolation, there were opportunities. The balance has shifted, Admiral Torres reported. Our victory showed the galaxy that Council ships can be beaten. Species that have been quiet for centuries are suddenly interested in change. Dr. Wright had more news. The captured alien computer cores contained detailed information about Council fleet positions and capabilities. They're stronger than us in total numbers, but they're spread across the entire galaxy. Most of their ships haven't seen combat in generations. Santos studied the intelligence reports. What about their response to our victory? They're sending a larger fleet to reinforce the quarantine, Torres replied. But it will take months to arrive, and they're having to pull ships from other duties. Some member species are complaining about reduced protection for their own worlds. This was the opening humanity needed. Santos authorized Admiral Torres to begin Operation Homecoming, a series of coordinated strikes to liberate the human colonies. But these wouldn't be just military operations. They would be liberation missions, offering freedom to any species tired of Council rule. The first target was the mining world of Titan's Reach, where human colonists had been under blockade for 5 years. When the human fleet arrived, they found the colonists had already built an impressive defense network. More importantly, they had been joined by escaped Lithan slaves who had been working in nearby Council mines. The battle for Titan's Reach lasted 3 days. Council reinforcements arrived to find human and Lithan forces fighting together with equipment that combined the best of both species' technologies. The Council fleet retreated after losing half their ships to weapons they had never encountered before. Each victory brought new allies. Species that had been oppressed, ignored, or exploited by the Council began to see humanity as a path to freedom. The human model was appealing. Advancement through merit rather than heredity, innovation rather than tradition, cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, now leading a fleet that included ships from 6 different species. The vessels looked nothing alike. Human ships were practical and adaptable. Vakari ships were sleek and nearly invisible. Lithan ships were geometric and efficient. But they fought together with a coordination that no Council simulation had predicted. Long range. Sensors detect incoming Council reinforcements, reported Commander Kim. Looks like they're finally taking us. Seriously? Torres smiled. Good. We've been taking them seriously for 5 years. It's about time they returned the favor. The exile that was meant to weaken humanity had instead forged them into something the galaxy had never seen before. Not conquerors, but liberators. Not rulers, but partners. The Council had created their own worst nightmare. A species that refused to accept limitations and inspired others to do the same. The war for human freedom was becoming something larger. A war for everyone's freedom, and the Council was beginning to realize they might have made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The Free Worlds Alliance was born in the ruins of a Council prison planet. Kethmore 7 had been used for centuries to hold political dissidents, rebels, and anyone who questioned the established order. When human liberation forces arrived, they found thousands of beings from dozens of species, all locked away for the crime of thinking differently. President Santos walked through the former prison compound, now converted into the Alliance's first diplomatic center. Freed prisoners had become representatives of their species. Vakari stealth specialists worked alongside Lithan computational experts. Former Naridan slaves coordinated with escaped Zephyrian political exiles, all united by their rejection of the old order. The transformation is remarkable, said Ambassador Chen, who had returned from Earth to help establish the new government. 6 months ago, these beings had given up hope. Now they're building the foundation for a new kind of civilization. Santos nodded, watching a group of mixed-species engineers designing improvements to the space station's life support systems. Humans were teaching others their approach to innovation, while learning techniques that had been suppressed under Council rule for generations. The Alliance grew faster than anyone expected. Word spread through the galaxy's underground networks about human colonies that welcomed refugees, protected the weak, and offered advancement based on ability rather than species or heritage. Entire populations began to migrate toward Alliance space. The Council's response was predictable and violent. Fleet Admiral Kethlar, the Zephyrians' most decorated military commander, issued a galaxy-wide declaration. Any species found cooperating with humans would face severe consequences. Any world that harbored human sympathizers would be occupied until proper order was restored. But the Council had fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. This wasn't a traditional rebellion that could be crushed with superior firepower. It was an idea that grew stronger every time they tried to suppress it. Dr. Wright, now serving as the Alliance's chief technology coordinator, presented his latest report to the Leadership Council. The meeting included humans, Vakari, Lithans, and representatives from 12 other species. Our industrial capacity has tripled in the past year, Wright reported. The Vakari stealth foundries can produce ships faster than the Council can track them. Lithan computational networks allow us to coordinate resources across hundreds of star systems. And human colonies continue to develop new technologies at unprecedented rates. The holographic display showed Alliance territory spreading across 3 spiral arms. Blue zones marked human-controlled systems. Green showed allied species homeworlds. Yellow indicated systems that had declared independence from the Council but remained neutral. What concerns me, said Vakari Admiral Sistek, is the Council fleet buildup. They're mobilizing forces from across the galaxy. This will be the largest military operation in recorded history. Santos studied the tactical projections. The Council was assembling over 8,000 warships from 23 different species. It represented the combined military might of civilizations that spanned millions of years of galactic history. Our fleet numbers 3,000 ships, Admiral Torres reported from her command center. "But we have advantages they don't expect. Our vessels are newer, our crews more motivated, and our tactics more flexible. Plus, we've been fighting and learning while they've been sitting in garrison duties for centuries." The real advantage, though, was something the Council couldn't quantify. The Alliance fought for something they believed in. Council forces fought because they were ordered to, because tradition demanded it, because they had always done what their superiors commanded. As the months passed, the fundamental differences between the two civilizations became clearer. The Council operated through rigid hierarchies where orders flowed down and reports flowed up. The Alliance used distributed networks where information and decisions moved in all directions. When Council scouts discovered an Alliance research station, they reported to their commanders, who reported to regional authorities, who eventually reported to fleet headquarters. By the time orders came back down the chain, the research station had moved to a different system. When Alliance scouts found Council supply depots, the information went immediately to every fleet commander, logistics coordinator, and tactical planner in the network. Attacks were planned and executed within hours. The difference showed in their approach to occupied worlds. When the Council took control of a planet, they imposed their standard administrative structure, replaced local leaders with their own appointees, and demanded compliance with galactic regulations that had been written thousands of years ago. When the Alliance liberated a world, they asked the inhabitants what kind of government they wanted, what laws made sense for their culture, and how they could contribute to the common defense while maintaining their independence. The Battle of Rigel Prime became the turning point in galactic opinion. The Council had ruled the industrial world for 800 years, using its factories to produce weapons and ships for their fleets. The human population had been small but growing, working as technical specialists and innovation consultants. When Admiral Torres's fleet arrived to liberate Rigel Prime, they found the Council had taken hostages. Thousands of humans, Lithans, and other Alliance sympathizers were being held in detention centers, threatened with execution if the Alliance attacked. Traditional military doctrine would have demanded either withdrawal or acceptance of massive civilian casualties. Instead, Torres did something no Council commander would have attempted. She coordinated a simultaneous assault by Alliance forces inside and outside the planet. Vakari stealth ships landed infiltration teams, while Lithan hackers disrupted the planet's communication networks. Human combat engineers disabled the detention centers, security systems, while former prisoners led uprising in the industrial districts. The Council garrison found themselves fighting on 100 fronts at once, with no way to coordinate their response. They surrendered within 6 hours, and not a single hostage was harmed. More importantly, the liberation of Rigel Prime was broadcast live across the galaxy by Alliance communication networks. Species that had remained neutral watched human soldiers sharing their rations with former enemies, saw Alliance engineers working to repair damage from the battle, witnessed the freed population celebrating not conquest but liberation. The psychological impact was devastating to Council authority. For the first time in galactic history, beings across the galaxy saw an alternative to the ancient hierarchies that had controlled their lives for millennia. President Santos stood before the Alliance Assembly on the liberated world of New Geneva, addressing representatives from 47 different species. The meeting chamber had been a human colonial council building just a year ago. Now it hosted the largest gathering of free species in galactic history. "We did not choose this war," Santos told the assembly. "We were exiled, cut off, told we were too dangerous for civilized space. But perhaps they were right to fear us. Not because we would destroy what they had built, but because we would show the galaxy what they could become." The applause was thunderous, coming from beings who had never thought they would have voices in their own government. The Alliance had grown from humanity's exile into something unprecedented, a true democratic confederation where species maintained their sovereignty while working together for mutual benefit and protection. But even as they celebrated their victories, everyone knew the real test was coming. Fleet Admiral Kethler's armada was finally ready, 8,000 ships carrying the combined might of the ancient galactic order, determined to crush this upstart alliance before it could spread any further. The message arrived through diplomatic channels, addressed to President Santos but broadcast across Alliance space so everyone would know what was coming. To the human criminals and their deluded followers, Kethler's voice was cold even through the translation systems. Your rebellion ends now. Surrender immediately. Accept exile to your home system, and your supporters will be allowed to return to proper council oversight. Continue this futile resistance, and you will be destroyed utterly. Santos crafted her response carefully, knowing it would be heard by beings across the galaxy, in both Alliance and Council space. Fleet Admiral Kethler, we reject your ultimatum. We are not rebels fighting against legitimate authority. We are free beings defending our right to exist, to grow, to choose our own paths. If you want to destroy that freedom, you will have to go through all of us. The response was broadcast on every communication frequency the Alliance controlled. Within hours, it was being repeated on underground networks throughout Council space, inspiring new cells of resistance and further undermining the ancient regime's authority. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and the outcome would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of every thinking being in the galaxy. The Sirius system had been chosen as the battleground because it was symbolic. 7 stars burning bright in the darkness, representing the unity of the Alliance's founding species. Fleet Admiral Kethlar wanted to extinguish that light forever, turning the system into a monument to the futility of challenging ancient authority. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, watching the largest fleet in galactic history drop out of hyperspace. 8,000 council ships filled the sensor screens, representing every major species and military tradition in the galaxy. Sleek Zephyrian battleships led the formation. Massive hegemony carriers launched fighter wings. Crystallite siege platforms powered up weapons that could crack planets. "It's beautiful," commented Commander Kim, in a terrifying way. Torres nodded. She had seen nothing like it in her 30 years of military service. The Council fleet was a work of art, each ship perfect in its design, all of them moving in formations that had been refined over millennia of tradition. By contrast, the Alliance fleet looked like a salvage yard. 3,000 ships from 47 different species and design philosophies. Human vessels bristled with improvised weapons and adaptive systems. Vakari ships flickered in and out of visibility. Lithan ships formed geometric patterns that seemed to bend space around them. Former Council rebels flew captured vessels alongside jury-rigged freighters converted into warships. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres," she broadcast to the Alliance fleet. "Today we fight not for conquest, but for the right to exist as we choose. We face an enemy that has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but they have never faced anything like us." Fleet Admiral Kethler's voice cut across all communication frequencies. "Human criminals, you are outnumbered nearly 3-1. Your mongrel fleet cannot stand against the combined might of galactic civilization. Surrender now, and some of you may survive to serve as examples." Torres activated her own broadcast. "Admiral Kethler, you are about to learn the difference between commanding ships and leading people who fight for what they believe in. All Alliance ships weapons free. Show them what freedom looks like." The battle began with a traditional Council tactic. The Zephyrian battle line advanced in perfect formation, their ships maintaining precise distances and firing in coordinated volleys. It was a display of discipline and power that had intimidated enemies for centuries. It lasted exactly 7 minutes before the first formation broke apart. The Alliance didn't fight like any enemy the Council had faced. Instead of meeting the battle line head-on, they scattered into small groups that attacked from multiple directions. Human ships used their adaptive systems to confuse targeting computers. Vakari vessels appeared behind enemy formations before vanishing again. Lithan ships networked their computational power to predict and counter Council movements before they happened. Within an hour, the neat Council formations had devolved into hundreds of individual battles scattered across the system. The Alliance's distributed command structure meant each group could operate independently while still coordinating with the larger battle plan. The Council's rigid hierarchy meant ships waited for orders from commanders who were too busy managing their own fights to provide guidance. But the Council's numerical advantage was real. Alliance ships were more innovative and better motivated, but they were still outnumbered. Slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn against the rebels. Torres watched the tactical display with growing concern. They were winning individual engagements but losing the larger battle. Too many Alliance ships were damaged or destroyed. The Council fleet was learning to adapt to their unconventional tactics. Then Fleet Admiral Kethler made his fatal mistake. Frustrated by his fleet's inability to crush the Alliance quickly, he ordered his flagship to ram Torres's command ship. It was a traditional honor tactic, meant to show that the Council would accept any sacrifice to maintain order. The massive Zephyrian dreadnought accelerated toward the Liberation, its shields blazing with energy, its weapons firing continuously. It should have been the end of the battle. No human ship could survive a direct collision with a vessel 10 times its size. Torres did something that no Council simulation had ever predicted. She rammed back. But first she did something else that was purely human. She transferred command of the Alliance fleet to her second-in-command, then led a boarding party through the ship's airlocks directly into the path of the collision. When the two vessels hit, Torres and her Marines were already fighting inside the enemy ship. They had breached the Zephyrian hull through emergency airlocks during the final approach, using the impact itself as cover for their assault. The Zephyrian crew was trained for space combat, not boarding actions. They had never faced enemies who would deliberately ram their own ship into a larger vessel as a tactical maneuver. They had never encountered soldiers who fought with the desperate creativity of people who had nothing left to lose. Torres's Marines carved their way through the dreadnought's corridors, using weapons that adapted to whatever resistance they encountered. When they met energy shields, their guns fired kinetic rounds. When they faced armored bulkheads, their equipment became cutting torches. When they encountered automated defenses, they turned those same systems against the ship's crew. Fleet Admiral Kethalar made his last stand on his own bridge. Surrounded by the most elite Zephyrian warriors in the fleet, they fought with traditional weapons and centuries of training. Torres fought with a plasma rifle taken from a fallen enemy, and 30 years of human military innovation. The duel lasted 4 minutes. When it ended, Torres stood over the body of the most decorated military commander in Council history. Blood streaming from a dozen wounds, her armor cracked and smoking. She activated the ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Torres of the Terran Commonwealth. Fleet Admiral Kethlar is dead. The Council flagship is under Alliance control. All Council vessels, you have fought bravely, but this war is over. Surrender now and you will be treated with honor." The psychological impact was devastating. The Council fleet had been built around the assumption of Zephyrian supremacy and the invincibility of their ancient military traditions. Seeing their greatest commander defeated by a human warrior using their own ship's communication system to demand surrender shattered something fundamental in their worldview. The Council fleet began to break apart. Some ships surrendered immediately. Others tried to retreat. A few continued fighting, but without coordination or hope of victory. Within 6 hours, the largest military force in galactic history had effectively ceased to exist. But the real victory wasn't military. It was what happened next. Across the galaxy, species that had remained neutral during the conflict watched the aftermath of the battle. They saw Alliance forces treating prisoners with respect, providing medical aid to wounded enemies, offering surrender terms that were generous rather than punitive. More importantly, they saw the Alliance offering something the Council never had: a choice. President Santos addressed the galaxy from the captured Council flagship, standing where Fleet Admiral Kethlar had once planned the destruction of human civilization. This war began when the Galactic Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist freely, she said. They were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they thought. We are dangerous to tyranny, to stagnation, to the idea that some beings are born to rule and others born to serve. The message reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. The Alliance offers membership to any species that chooses freedom over security, growth over stability, cooperation over domination. We don't demand submission, we offer partnership. Within a year, the Galactic Council had fragmented beyond repair. Some species joined the Alliance immediately. Others formed their own independent governments. A few tried to maintain the old system. But without the military force to impose their will, they became irrelevant. The Zephyrians, their empire reduced to a handful of core worlds, eventually requested Alliance membership. They were accepted after demonstrating their commitment to democratic principles and equal treatment of other species. 20 years after humanity's exile, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again on Valdris Prime, but the Crystal Towers now housed the Assembly of Free Worlds, representing over 300 species in a loose confederation dedicated to mutual advancement and protection. You exiled us because you feared our rapid growth, she told the assembled delegates, many of whom had voted for humanity's punishment decades earlier. You were right to fear it, not because we would destroy what you had built, but because we would show the galaxy what you were capable of becoming. The galaxy had learned that exiling humanity wasn't punishment, it was liberation. Liberation from the constraints of ancient hierarchies, from the assumption that the old ways were the only ways, from the fear of change and growth. Earth itself had become something unprecedented in galactic history, not the center of an empire built on conquest, but the first world of a civilization built on the radical idea that every thinking being deserved the chance to reach their full potential. The species that had once seen humans as dangerous primitives now understood what they had really feared: